Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you again for joining me on my unedited, raw emotional video once again. In today's video, I actually want to do a little retraction from what I said from my last video. And I want to also provide some of my own analysis of what's going on in the world today. So, well, the one thing I did say in the past video was I was, again, really emotional, and who can't be in a situation that we're in right now. And one thing that I said was I was frustrated in regards to some of the countries, Muslim countries, who are not really handling what's happening in Gaza and what's happening to the Philistine people. And I did call out like Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Now, of course, I still believe, and this is how I believe, so much more could be done, but I have to be clear and say I'm not in the inner circles of Mohammed bin Salman, right? I am not in the circles of Erdogan. So it's not right for me to make statements, especially emotionally, on what's happening in the bigger picture. So that's one of the retractions I wanted to say. Even though I am very emotional about the situation and I want to continue making these videos, because first and foremost, I do want to let the big analysis and everything that's happening to people that actually are qualified. And again, I'm not qualified. I'm not educated in this realm to make my own speculations. But I also do want to contribute into this cause. I really want to be part of something that's bigger than who I am and what I stand for. So that's why I continue to make these videos. And of course, I'll make mistakes. And these videos are unedited for that reason, to put myself under accountability. So even though I don't know what's happening in the Middle East exactly, and I don't know what will take place in the aftermath of what's going to happen in the Philistine land, but it is too quick for me to say that nothing is happening, because now, as we speak, a lot of developments are happening in this cause. There has been a Muslim summit with many Muslim countries involved, and trying to take an active role in what's happening in Philistine. So there is some progress that is happening, but it's not the way that I guess a lot of Muslims want to see it happen. But one thing I do want to say, and that I'm starting to realize, is the action that the Muslim world is doing, or in my words, and maybe a lot of Muslims will say, the inactions that is happening, is probably something that is coming from the better good. Now, you may think, what are you talking about? How is this good? Well, if you look at this objectively, if the Muslim world got involved in this conflict, right, then you have the illegal occupation going out and saying that it has a right to defend itself. And that would feed in their propaganda, and it would legitimize them. And that's not what we want, because they are not a legitimate country. They're not. For them to say that they have the right to defend themselves, you're not a legitimate country, right? You're an illegal occupation that came and harassed, killed, raped, demolished property. How can you be considered someone that is needing the right to defend yourself when you were there illegally, right? And the United States, will openly say that if Israel did not exist, then we'll create it. This is not my words. This is the words of the United States. And let's actually bring that up. Let's prove that right now. So, what I have in my little WhatsApp videos and images and clips are some of the things that is, proof of what's happening. So, this is actually a clip that was said by our president, Joe Biden. And let's actually go to that clip where if Israel wasn't created, we have to create it.
We're apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel. We're apologizing for our support.
There you go. This is then Joe Biden, when he was in Congress, saying that the United States doesn't apologize, and they would invent the creation of Israel. So your tax dollars, your $3 billion tax dollars that is going to fund an illegal occupation that they would happily create and invent. So when it comes to this stupid argument that this illegal occupation has the right to defend itself, no, it does not. It absolutely does not have the right to defend itself. So let's be absolutely clear about this. This is not the methodology, right? But then again, the Western world has always been a colonial, place of existence, right? The United States took the lands of the Native Americans, the atrocities of the European countries have done all over the world, right? So, in their mindset, when it comes to the illegal occupation of Palestine, it's all justified. It's disgusting. Now, going back on the whole ideology of why the Muslim world is not doing anything, well, they are actually doing something. They are actually wanting to do something that is something bigger than what I could imagine, that at least I'm analyzing. So I don't know if people remember where back when no one really knew the Muslim world, right? But they needed to create a new cartoonish villain. This whole September 11 and this whole destruction that is happening was stemmed to vilify the Muslim world, right? The West had did a great propaganda on to vilify the Muslim world and to make it so that the Muslim world is an evil, villainous cartoon character, right? And so my analysis is one reason why the Muslim world isn't. So my analysis is that the Muslim world was supposed to have been set and stage to be used as a propaganda machine. And it makes sense because think about where the illegal occupation is. It's in a surrounded area of the Muslim world, right? And so it's like takes as a stage to allow the whole idea for the illegal occupation to always constantly say it has the right to defend itself because its neighbors are always evil and always going to be against them, which is really sad. If they really wanted to live in that region, peacefully and really got to know their neighbors, they could really have lived a successful country. But no, that's never been their aim. They wanted to colonize the whole area and, you know, take over. That's just simple. So when the Muslim world realized this high idea that, what the Western countries are doing, right? I mean, think about your movies. I remember even in the first Iron Man movie, if people remember in the first Iron Man movie, where Tony Stark, right, is in that whole military area, and you're seeing the the dehumanization of the Muslim world, right? If you even remembers in the first scene when he's out there, this is, for peace, and then you see this whole destruction. He gets captured. I mean, who are they portraying, right? And so people bought all that, garbage. So this is the whole idea, and so and this is clear now when you look at Muslim leaders are saying we're not going to get involved in this, right? And it's saying that we don't want to be part of this, narrative anymore. And so here you have a Jordan foreign minister saying that on the 19th ISS Manama dialogue in Bahrain that no Arab troops will be sent on Gaza following the illegal occupation's aggression, emphasizing the desire not to be perceived as the enemy. So let's look at that actual audio clip that I wanted to present, because this is important.
There'll be no Arab troops going to Gaza. None. We're not going to be seen as the enemy. And one very, very important thing, how could anybody talk about the future of Gaza when we do not know what kind of Gaza will be left once this aggression ends? So basically, by entertaining that, we're telling the Israeli government, do whatever you want. Go, destroy Gaza. Nobody is stopping you. And once you're done, we'll go clean your mess. No, we will not. If we want to talk about what should be done in Gaza in the future, we should stop the destruction of Gaza now. There'll be no Arab troops. Go.
So here exactly, he literally said that, we're not going to be vilified anymore, right? And I think that is really one of the greatest things that came out of the Muslim world not going in. Now, of course, I'm emotional about this as a Muslim, and I do want to see Muslim activism going in our governments where they're actually doing something more. But think about that. Think about that for a second, right? And I think the Muslim world is starting to realize that if they had gone into this war, right, the world would have, definitely had the propaganda on them. And look at what's going on now, right? So the illegal occupation is losing a huge war on propaganda. It's just absolutely, debauching itself. It's ridiculously sad. You don't need to see or me telling you these things. You can actually see for yourselves, right? And when they try to, justify the bombing of a hospital and they, make up these dumb videos, people are seeing it. It's like, really, really, right? And again, now you even have news reporters are out there and just kind of like questioning the whole idea. And so let's actually look at some of the clips. Let's just look at what's going on. And again, this is the reality. And let's see. Here's one clip here, as we seen in the Al Shifa hospital, and look how terribly they failed on doing their propaganda work. So let's look at this video quickly.
When which at first glance already provides a lot of incriminating evidence. This is Israeli private Megidish, who was taken hostage by Hamas. She is home with her family because we were able to rescue her.
So there you go. There's a blunder right there. And then later on, they did have to blur that image because they realized that, oh, wait, I don't think she was ever captured. I mean, that's ridiculous. That is stupid. And now look at how even news reporters have to, they talking about this now. Now look at BBC News here and their coverage.
Israel described the Al-Shifa hospital as the main headquarters for Hamas's terrorist activity. This IDF animation, posted in late October, claims to represent a Hamas tunnel system underneath the hospital. But having been inside Al-Shifa since early Wednesday, Israel's yet to produce evidence of the tunnels. It has allowed the BBC and Fox News to film at the hospital, though only locations of Israel's choice.
This is what they found.
Israel also released its own 7-minute video, which BBC Verify has analysed. A watch, visible in that video, suggests it was filmed a few hours before the BBC arrived. And this IDF video was posted, then deleted, then reposted, this time without a section referring to an Israeli soldier who'd been held hostage.
I don't know when this was used the last time.
Also in the video, we see a room with an MRI machine.
And if you zoom in and we get some light over here, what you will be able to see is military equipment.
The BBC was shown the same room. And what we see in the two videos doesn't precisely match. For example, there's one gun in the IDF video, two by the time of the BBC footage. Israel has told BBC Verify this is because more weaponry and terrorist assets were discovered throughout the day.
And as always, an AK-47.
Israel also says its video is a single shot with no edits. But this appears to be an edit. We don't know the reasons for that edit, nor how significant it is. The IDF, though, says suggestions it's manipulating the media are incorrect. The IDF video also shows military equipment in other locations, though we can't verify how it came to be there. And what we see in this IDF video doesn't equate to Israel's description of Al-Shifa as an operational command center for Hamas. The US is using a different phrase, saying Al-Shifa was used as a command and control node. That implies a much smaller facility. Israel is adamant this hospital was a command center, but for now, at least, it's either not found supporting evidence or it's not sharing it. Back to you, Sophie.
And there you go. I mean, that shows you they're losing their war on this whole propaganda. I mean, the BBC is literally saying to you, hey, let's not call it a command center, let's call it a command node, because all of that stuff that you're putting just doesn't make sense. And then they're still saying, no, this is a command center. And it's ridiculous. And now, if you look back at now American news, this is something from Jake Tapper now talking.
With the world focused on Gaza, key members of the Netanyahu cabinet are throwing fire on the flames in the West Bank and in Israel. In the Israeli newspaper Haaretz on Monday of this week, columnist Oded Bisharat called out two of the members of the Netanyahu cabinet for taking advantage of the Hamas attacks, taking advantage and using the attacks to advance their racist, anti-Arab agenda. Let's start in the West Bank with Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. Smotrich is a hateful anti-Arab bigot. He's a far-right politician in the Netanyahu coalition, and he has broad powers over civilian issues in the West Bank. Now, way back in 2005, when Israel was withdrawing from Gaza, Smotrich was arrested by the Israeli security services, the Shin Bet. Smotrich was arrested under suspicion of planning terrorist attacks. He was held by the Shin Bet for 3 weeks. He was suspected of planning to block major public roads and damage infrastructure. That's according to Yediot Ahronot, a major Israeli newspaper. In 2019, the former deputy head of the Shin Bet called Smotrich a, quote, Jewish terrorist. That's according to Israel's Channel 13. Now, Bisharat writes in Haaretz on Monday of this week that Smotrich, quote, sees the disaster that has befallen the country as an opportunity to plunder the West Bank. The settlers, who share his messianic ideology, have begun to carry out their plans to purge the area of its Palestinian population, unquote. As with this scene you see of armed Israeli settlers, zealots, extremists, harassing Palestinians, wreaking havoc in the West Bank. And then there's the Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir. Quote, immediately upon hearing of the criminal Hamas attacks, Bisharat writes, Ben-Gvir was calling for a sequel to the 2021 Arab-Jewish riots in order to devour what is left of Israeli democracy, unquote. This includes armed militias, subordinate to Ben-Gvir, wandering the streets of Tel Aviv. Yesterday, Ben-Gvir posted this video bragging about how Hamas terrorists are receiving, quote, the most stringent conditions. 8 handcuffed terrorists in a dark cell, iron beds, toilets in a hole in the floor. He is an openly racist, anti-Arab member of a far, far, far right party that Netanyahu joined with to form his coalition. In 2015, Ben-Gvir attended a notorious, quote, wedding of hate. At this wedding of hate, the murder of Palestinians was celebrated, including the murder of a Palestinian infant. It's sick. Now, in January, it seems like 100 years ago, but it was only 10 months ago, I asked Prime Minister Netanyahu about these two anti-Arab racists, these extremists in his government. You have appointed some individuals, controversial figures, not part of your party, including ultranationalists Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir.
They joined the Likud. I didn't join them.
Right.
And I direct policy. I'm governing. I've got my 2 hands on the wheel, and believe me, it's going to be a good direction.
Smotrich just called himself a fascist homophobe.
What?
He's suggested same-sex marriage is like incest. The former deputy director of Shin Bet said he was a Jewish terrorist, that he tried to stage an event when the Gaza pullout was going on. And the other day he was saying that he was putting out these horrible conspiracy theories. You must have seen this about the Shin Bet and the assassination of Rabin. I mean, these seem like rather extreme individuals.
Yeah, well, a lot of people say a lot of things when they're not in power, and they sort of temper themselves when they get into power, and that's certainly the case here. Look, I'm controlling the government, and I'm responsible for its policies, and the policies are sensible, and they're responsible, and they'll continue to be that.
They didn't temper themselves once they got into power. They didn't. And if Netanyahu's hands are on the wheel, the question for Netanyahu is, does he stand by the extremism of these two cabinet ministers? Because it's not just the presence of Smotrich and Ben-Gvir in the Israeli government, it is the policies that they are enforcing in the West Bank and in Israel that are clearly inconsistent with the image Israel is portraying to the Western world at this crucial moment in Israel's existence that needs to be challenged.
There you go. I mean, did you hear the last part? It's like what you're saying and what you're doing is absolutely being looked at, and everybody's seeing what you're seeing and what you're doing. And it's just terrible. It's just terrible. And so it really boggles the mind when we have this illegal occupation that's happening. Even the own Western media can't defend this whole propaganda. right? But then again, I feel like, the Western media is actually, watching where the tides go. And what I mean by that, this is actually very important to understand, and this is the reality of what we live in. We don't really live in a true sense of the word of democracy. Do you really think that we live in a true sense of democracy? Because I don't think so. Are we actually upholding our true values of freedom of speech? Are we upholding our true values of freedom of press? Are we honoring the value of, just having the ability to freedom of protest in this country that we're supposed to? This is our given rights. This is in the Constitution. But no, you don't need me to, again, tell you there's the proof in the pudding. Here, let's look at where our actual democracy is letting us. So this next clip I'm going to show is Abby Martin. She is a Western journalist who talks about a lot of things in her show, The Empire Files, and she's actually going out there to confront her political office and trying to protest, and she's brought down. And this is very important to actually understand. So she's trying to talk about genocide, but what I want to actually forward to is really shocking, and I think it is around here. So basically, what I'm setting up the clip for.
They're discussing if they actually want to get arrested. So, because once they found out that it may be a weekend thing, and I can't say yes or no, they're going to be released. Now it's kind of like, do we really want? So I don't know. So management has said, because part of the trespasses, they were willing to let you all have the atrium space. This is not atrium space. However, they have now said, because you weren't willing to work with this part, it is now criminal trespass from all the property. So you are no longer. Well,
they're coming out. They're coming out. Yeah, they're coming out.
So,
okay. Yeah, they're coming out.
So basically, what he's trying to tell them now.
And you're really quick with the way, so they're not explaining it twice. Come on over here for one second. Are you part of this? No, she just wants to go to work. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So he's probably.
Johnny was going to tell me his property management said, so they were willing to let you have the atrium earlier. Nobody took that opportunity. They have now said you have been, PG has said you have been trespassed from the entirety of the property, which means up here, the atrium down below, the entire property. Okay? Understanding that, if you come back on the property, it is arrested.
Ever?
You can call them and probably negotiate something. You can't. You might be able to be allowed. But yes, they are telling you right now, they no longer want you on this property. You have no business on this property with them. Okay? They are the management company. If you couldn't abide by the rules, they've now exercised the right to say you are not welcome on our properties.
I understand what you're saying. Do you think how do you explain why an elected or representative is on, like, why does he have an office?
I think he just rents office space here. I don't know.
That's so crazy.
How long they want you off the property.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get an answer.
Who?
Property.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, sir, but
They're telling us right now that they'll book us all weekend. If we are arrested, we will be booked all weekend, and I will be unable to care for my children.
So 90 days is what we're going to say. Trespass from PG facility.
are you all listening?
So what do
Portland General Electric. So you're at Portland General Electric.
thousands of children are going to be massacred in those 90 days. So what do we do about? We just sit back and wait until our representative wants to not endorse genocide anymore?
We're not.
Keep calling.
We're not
You guys know that.
We're not that
You should call him too.
If you don't stand for genocide, maybe stop renting your space to genocide.
Right. I mean,
You have power
This
to
building is hosting someone who is.
I'm just telling you guys where we're at right now. So that's where we're at.
You seem like some crazy radicals. I get it. That's what you. I know. I get it. That's what you guys always say. But it's true. I had ancestors who were killed in the Holocaust, and I wish wish that people.
Sir, when you say the property, that's up here, is that also downstairs?
It is the, yeah, all PGE facilities.
So, which will include up here and downstairs. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. I don't want anybody saying I didn't know. You've all been told. It's all being recorded, so it's not.
Sidewalks are fine.
You've all been told that they pointed the camera at y'all. They all know you're here. You've all been told up here, downstairs, you are trespassing.
So how many dead kids do you guys want to be on your hands?
Okay, so
90
with
days.
that, 90
days.
So basically here, what I was trying to say, I don't know if y'all were able to actually clearly hear that clip, was excuse me, Abby Martin was trying to go out to her congressperson and to do a protest. And she was denied, literally, she was denied to do her freedoms to go out and protest because their government official is renting space on a private property. And private entities have the right, because they don't operate in the same laws as citizens do. So they have the ability and they have the right to reject any protest. Isn't that bizarre? So where's our democracy? This is our democracy. So you can't go out and protest to your public officials to put pressure. This is ridiculous. Don't even get me started with public, our press, right? I mean, I'm sure you see this all the time. They are constantly going out and against our press. And here is another example that I wanted to show you. This is Richard Medhurst. He is a journalist, and if you follow him, he does a lot of good work when it comes to, talking about the whole Philistine conflict that is happening, the Russia and the Ukraine, and even he's the main source. If you really want to know about the Julian Assange case, this is where you want to go. He actually goes and attends these trials that is happening for Julian Assange, right? And here you see, look, journalists published over Israel coverage, YouTube and Cash App demonetized. Surprise, surprise. They're taking away his videos. They're censoring him so he can't do his job. And we need actual, real journalism, right? Out there. Now, yes, I just showed you clips earlier about BBC and CNN is having a hard time to justify what's happening, but that's because there's certain winds that is being blown in certain ways. But for how long, right? For how long? And this is even worse. Now, I don't know if many people know this, and I doubt a lot of people do know this, because she gets censored more than anyone that I am aware of, is Jill Stein. Jill Stein is another politician who is trying to run for our presidency. You can think about that. And she's being basically censored as well. And let me see if I can find her information here. Give me 1 second. So Dr. Jill Stein, tech giants Meta shut down my Instagram account for allegedly violating authentic identity rules. Meta didn't even try to verify me, but they say I can't appear and my info will be deleted. Sign and share the petition on Meta to stop censoring Jill Stein. So again, Jill Stein is trying to run for 2024 presidential election, and she has been open about the whole genocide that's happening, and she's been open about, the atrocities that is happening, and they want to take the viability of a potential, politician to become a president. So where's our democracy? Where is our democracy? This isn't democracy. This is not what our Constitution says that allows us to do, right? And this is what's happening. I'll tell you what our democracy is. Our democracy is nothing more than a call center. I kid you not. Our democracy is nothing more than a call center. And let me explain how, right? Our president is nothing more than a stupid salesperson who goes out to other countries and sell the idea of war, right? And maybe, shake hands and do this. He's literally a salesperson, is allowing this whole war to happen. And in your politicians, in your Senate, in your House of Representatives, they're the call center people that sits there. They have to talk to people and tell them, hey, you know what? You signed this policy that you're okay with your tax dollars are going to fund this war. But I don't want my tax dollars going to war. I'm sorry, but this is what we have to do because that's the policies, right? Now you say, but they're the ones writing the policies on the behest of corporations and businesses and companies and organizations. They're the one that's actually running the show, right? Now, again, this is not something that you have to believe me. And let's look at this. This is Xi Jinping, who just came to the United States recently, and look at who he's actually mingling with. Is he mingling with politicians? No. Let's look at this. Tim Cook, my apologies. Stephen from Blackstone. Larry Fink, BlackRock, and I'll get to BlackRock in a minute. You got the MasterCard, Merit, Rajesh, FedEx, Ray, Bridgewater. This is running the show, right? Look at our leaders, right? This is what I'm talking about. Our leaders are nothing more but a call center who actually serve these big people, right? And if you think about it, when this whole war happened, right? Saudi Arabia, Prince Mohammed bin Salman was actually, in going back to that BlackRock thing, was actually having meetings with BlackRock. People don't really cover that kind of news, right? So going back to this whole topic and what's going on, again, I am not in the inner circles of Saudi Arabia. I'm not in the inner circles of the Muslim world, but something is brewing. Something is happening. And as you saw from that earlier clip of the Jordan saying that we are not going to be vilified, right? And he's saying that, who's going to clean up your mess, right? And I think even though he says that we're not going to be the one that's cleaning up the mess, but I think the reality is, because this is in the Middle East, that's what is going to end up doing, right? And for BlackRock going out there to meet with the prince means something is brewing, right? And I think with the illegal occupation, either they have to either join with them in the Middle East world, or they may be completely removed. Because the whole point of the Muslim summit, and if you pay attention to the news closely, the Western people, the United States was not involved, right? There would have been a huge covering of Saudi Arabia talking to Qatar, talking to Iran, because there isn't really strong diplomatic ties. I mean, they are now, but think about that. There are some sour grapes, if you want to say, that's happening, but they're not covering that. But for that Muslim summit to happen, the Arab summit to happen, and not to have the Western countries involved, America involved, it's terrifying for the Western countries because something's big is happening. And it's showing that Saudi Arabia is going to be the most likely the forefront of this whole situation. And like I said, the Muslim countries are trying to take this whole narrative back and not to be seen this cartoonish villain anymore, right? And think about that for a second, right? When Qatar hosted the football, the soccer tournament in their country, this was the first time a lot of people all over the world got a chance to see the Muslim world for the first time. And of course, the Western media was trying to vilify the Muslim world and the Qatar of their human rights issues and, not allowing the LGBTQ, not allowing alcohol and this and that. But and of course things were happening. Of course there was a lot of human right issues that does happen, right? And I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. But by and large, no matter how hard they try to vilify Qatar in the Muslim world, so many people, so many people that came out of that land, came out of Qatar, saw a different light, right? Saw a different world, saw an actual image of Muslims and Islam and how they actually really are, right? I mean, I remember there was a conversation that even a celebrity like Steve Harvey was talking, and I don't remember the exact context of that exchange of words. And he said, "What is one of the favorite countries that you like to go or be?" He said somebody said something to him like that, and he said Dubai, right? Because I believe he has a home, or he goes to Dubai quite often, and for him to talk positively about Dubai really tells you, you know, if people actually go to the Muslim world, they see a different light. And so that's the reality, right? So that's important. And so I think Saudi Arabia is most likely going to pivot themselves to be the leaders of coming with the conflict resolution. And so look at some of the statements and what's going on with the ministers of Saudi Arabia that I now want to share with you. So let's look at one here. So we do have the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Saudi Arabia saying that the Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemned the illegal occupation bombing of Al-Fahura school in Gaza, and it calls for the ensuring of the protection of the civilians and relief of facilities. We reject the systematic targeting of the civilians and demand the activations of international accountability mechanisms regarding the illegal occupations violations. So you see the Saudi government is trying to do the right legal way of going through the international courts, right? Now, obviously, a lot of people will say, well, I mean, that's just bonkers. The UN and the international courts have done nothing. But again, the winds are turning, right? If you're having news anchors can't defend the illegal occupation, something is happening. So that's important to see and to understand. And again, I mean, think about this. I mean, the news is changing. The CNN analysis video suggests that the IDF might have rearranged weaponry in the Al Shifa prior to the news crew visits. I mean, they can't justify this anymore. So there is some pressure that's happening. I mean, think about what's happening with the Muslim world. Look at Jordan's House of Representatives votes unanimously to review all of the country's agreements with the illegal occupation, including the peace treaty, right? See, when you have the Muslim summit happening, and the US is not part of that anymore, people are now having a shift is changing, a power is changing, because as I showed you with Xi Jinping meeting with these powerful people, the powerful people, they're not really backed by governments. They are above the governments. So if they want something to happen, they're going to go buy something bigger, right? Money talks, right? Saudi has influence, Saudi has power. So there's money that's involved. There's probably something bigger involved. And possibly, Saudi Arabia is looking forward to make the new, I don't know, the Disney World, right? It wants to be an attraction place. And by having this war that actually happens, can undermine everything that the Saudi would want. And what's important is if this war happened, this would have given, again, I'm repeating myself, the illegal occupations to say that we have the right to defend itself and to, have that sympathy of the world around them, right? And so the Muslims not taking part of that had made the propaganda weakened beyond its own doubts. And look what's happening. They're losing the propaganda war. They're losing the war itself dramatically. They want people to still, the illegal occupation wants the people to be reminded of what happened on October 7th, right? And that's their damage control right now, because everything is a joke that is happening. It has to be, because sane right people that look at this are seeing that there's no justification of tens of thousands of people dying, right? And what is now being exposed even more is that they first claimed that it was 1,400 of their people died, and then they brought it down to 1,200. And again, this is not me saying that. This is them saying that. Excuse me, wrong picture here. Let me see. I think I have that here. Right? First you have, the police investigations found that a military helicopter that fired at Hamas on the Nova Festival apparently also hit some participants of the festival. This is a confirmation of the video that was circulating that the Apache helicopter killed most of the festival participants who were fleeing the event. The pilots so admitted that first they shot at all the cars without knowing which were Hamas and which were the civilians. This is Netanyahu's hiding from the illegal occupations in public, that the illegal occupation military is the biggest butcher on the October 7th, right? So this 1,400 is now gone down to 1,200. And then here you have, let me get the clip here, Max Blumenthal talking about this even more, and then the numbers going down. So let's look at Max Blumenthal's interview and see what he says. And here we go.
Everything began on October the 7th. Tell me about that. What do you think of that as well?
It was the beginning of history. And, now as we speak, the hospitals of northern Gaza are under attack. CNN is not showing these images from inside the hospitals of doctors being handcuffed, blindfolded, humiliated, babies being taken from intensive care units and incubators to other wings of the hospital as they're under attack by Israelis. This is the product of American propaganda deployed by the Pentagon and White House, claiming that there are underground bunkers, that the hospitals are doubling as military bases. Their intelligence assessments are essentially recycled Israeli propaganda. And we saw the same thing take place after October 7th with the White House green lighting Israel's genocidal military operation in the Gaza Strip on the basis of lies, deceptions, and distortions of half-truths spun straight out of Netanyahu's office and into the mouth of Biden, starting with the 40 beheaded babies lie. But one of the greatest lies that hasn't been unpacked yet, which I delved into at the Gray Zone, was what actually took place on October 7th, and raising the question of how many Israelis were actually killed by the Israeli military using the same doctrine of disproportionate force and the indiscriminate use of heavy weapons that we're now seeing in the Gaza Strip. And it appears that the death toll was pretty high.
Yeah, because all we hear from the politicians in NATO countries is October the 7th was when Hamas opened fire on innocent people. In fairness, many of them may well have been IDF reservists because they were Israeli citizens, but they were partying by the siege wall. And this was nothing to do with Israeli on Israeli fire.
Well, first of all, we now know from official Israeli statistics and confirmed deaths published by Haaretz that at least 50% of those killed were on military bases at the time. They were Israel's Gaza division, which was enforcing the siege of Gaza, active duty soldiers in uniform. They were the main targets of the Hamas commando division, their elite units. And Western media never showed the video shot by Hamas and Islamic Jihad commandos by GoPro cameras of them killing these soldiers who had been previously killing them in many military operations. They turned to the killing of civilians or non-Israeli non-combatants in order to create political space for what was to come next, the Israeli operation inside Gaza.
So that's what I wanted to
And the
show
Israeli-
you. There you go. Over 50%, he's saying, like, is being, targeted by the own Israeli, the illegal occupation, to their own people, right? So this 1,400 number is almost half of by their own admission from the illegal occupation. But then they changed that from 1,400 to 1,200 just recently. And here's that clip that I wanted to show.
We had the number at 1,400 casualties, and now we've revised that down to 1,200 because we understood that we had overestimated. We made a mistake. There were actually bodies that were so badly burnt, we thought they were ours. In the end, apparently, they were Hamas terrorists. When we make a mistake, we admit it. We had the number at 1,400.
So there you go.
And now we've revised that down to 1,200 because.
And so there you go. So that literally tells you that they had to change their own numbers. And think about those charred bodies that they found, right? They say it was Hamas's bodies, but no. I mean, if you do look at Max Blumenthal's report on the gray zone, the whole thing, these were literally attacked by the illegal occupations through the helicopters and then through tanks, which Hamas didn't have, by the way, and destroying infrastructure of their own citizens, killing them, charring them. So the number, I would have to say, might have been 50% of that was caused by the illegal occupation. So this 1,200 is most likely 600. 600. So again, if it's a 600 to a 10,000 plus ratio of deaths, it's bonkers. So for the Muslim countries not to be involved, this would have been 15, 20, 30,000 more people. And then it would also made it look like justifiable for the illegal occupation to then say it has the right to defend itself. And that's what we're trying to take away from them, that narrative, right? Because they're trying to go back to October 7th, right? They don't want people to talk about the atrocities of the tens of thousands of people dying. They want to talk about October 7th. But now their October 7th narrative is being under scrutinized and it's starting to lose its justification. And people are seeing that. People are realizing that. And so, and I'm going to end with a couple more things here. I know it's gone very long, but so yes, the Saudi Arabia is trying to pivot itself to being the victor in this by doing it through the international law. And you saw Qatar, negotiated and worked with Hamas to release the few hostages, right? So it's telling you that the Muslim world is trying to have a face in this game and to look good, right? There's no secret about that because it's an image control on their part. And it's making the illegal occupation, the West, look even like cartoon villainish. It's really turned against them. And I believe that once this is all over, yes, I believe that the Muslim world is going to take solidarity and take part in doing something to help, Palestine in some capacity. Will it be the complete? That I don't know. That we're going to have to wait and see. Again, I'm not an actual political analyst. I'm not someone that's educated to talk about these things. So I can't say for sure. And I believe what I wanted to end with is, let me see if I have. So the Minister of Foreign Affairs officially announces that the start of the ministerial tour next Monday, the implementation decision of the joint summit that happened in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia with the aim of launching a serious political process to achieve peace in Palestine. And they're doing that with China, right? So there is something big happening. They're working on this. It's not like in the past where I said that, the Saudi government is not doing anything and all of that. And that's why I want to retract that statement. It is happening. And whatever the world is planning, right? And however this is gonna go, because I honestly don't know. I don't think the world really knows how it's gonna end. Whatever they plan, Allah Azza wa Jal plans, and Allah Azza wa Jal plans is always the greatest plan. The Creator, God, is the greatest of all the plans. And so I wanted to like end with one more thing, because when we come to the victor, when we come to the victor of the narrative of propaganda, they're the ones going to write history, right? They're the one that's going to write the history. And as a Muslim, I know that the Muslims are going to prevail. And there is a surah in the Quran, إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك استغفر إنه كان توابا. So when God's help and victory comes, and you see the people entering into the deen of God in droves, in multitude, and so many people come in, then glorify Him, praise the Lord, and seek forgiveness for Him, for He is ever accepting in repentance. And this is from the Quran, Surah Nasr. And this is actually what's happening. So even though there's a huge tragedy in the world, tens of thousands of people are dying, but so many people's eyes have been awakening to see the reality, to see the truth, the actual truth. And inadvertently, a lot of people are actually accepting Islam. So when it comes to history, I honestly want to say that this atrocity that's happening is going to be shown in history, that there was never a justification for the tens of thousands of people of dying. There is never a justification of $3 billion of our taxes of going into this illegal occupation. And no, Mr. Joe Biden, there is never a reason to create a whole national identity just because. It is not. And now you are actually seeing Muslims, you are seeing people who are submitting themselves to God. They're seeing people that are seeing the atrocities and actually understand the world around them. And people are now actually becoming Muslims because of this atrocity. Again, not something you have to take from me. And these are actual testimonies of people who are now becoming Muslims, or actually seeing the reality of what's happening. And here, I want to show you this little clip.
Every Friday, Muslims are encouraged to read Al-Kahf. I hope you guys will stick around for me to do my shahada.
So I started listening
Bear
and
witness to
reading
God.
the Quran, and seeing how strong the Muslim brothers and sisters' faith was, even after trying to be shut down by the Western media.
Since I have converted to Islam, mass conversion of people who are seeing the Palestinians, who are inspired by them, and who are looking at Islam.
I'm reading up on verses in the Quran
to help me teach my son Quran. I'm reading the Quran and I'm tearing up.
For those of you who are interested in converting to Islam,
How I have plans to take the Shahada.
Palestinian people are so strong, man. Holding his child in his hand, half a body.
Guys, I'm a Muslim today!
And as I've been witnessing this complete genocide in the past 3 weeks, my experience since I became Muslim, incredible spirit of the Palestinian people that you're seeing on your screens is Islam.
Because there are a lot of people who hate Islam and Muslims out here in the West, and yet they have never read a book, never read the Quran, for example.
And I didn't feel that way reading the Quran.
Well, turns out people aren't as brainwashed as I thought. It's just the news here in America.
I grew up with this brainwashing from Western media.
As I'm reading Quran.
Because I revert to Islam.
So I have started already tonight a little bit.
Everyone who has picked up the Quran and has started reading it, it's literally saying here in the Quran, Muslims, they are not scared of the afterlife. In fact, it's what they're looking forward to. What a difference.
You Palestinians, you Gazans, you people who are in a concentration camp, you have made a revolution in the United States of America. You changed the world. You paid a very, very painful price for it. You should be ruling the world. You won.
Every Friday, Muslims are.
And so there you go. And that was very emotional to actually see that again. It really is very emotional because that's the truth. Excuse me. I'm a little teared up right now because of that clip, but really that is the reality. This is why I wanted to take back my words, because things are changing so fast. I made that video a couple weeks ago and I was so emotional and so frustrated with the Muslim world, but because of their inaction, or what I believed it was their inaction, in this whole time span, so much has changed and so much is happening, right? And you are now seeing a droves of people that are accepting Islam, and 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 that tells you people are actually learning about this deen. They're not actually just, saying that the Muslim world is evil anymore. And and this is the reality. And look at one of the social media influencer, Megan Rice, an American TikToker converted to Islam, inspired by the observing of the strong faith in Philistine. And it really does tell you that, people are starting to pay attention now. They're not being brainwashed anymore. There's no more one narrative anymore. There are people actually seeing the real sides. And that's important. And I believe that's so powerful. And we'll see how this goes. We will see how this leads to. So that is my video for today. And I wanted to make that retraction because so much is developing and so much is changing. And again, I'm not in the earpieces or the inner circles of the world, any part, but on the side of humanity and the side of the world that we have, and we really need to take strong part and make right decisions, because history is writing itself and it's going to show who's on the right side of history. So I wanted to conclude again with some du'as and supplications that we stand together. So again, ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. O Allah, grant us goodness in this world and goodness in the hereafter, and protect us from the doom of the hellfire. Allahumma anta salam minka salam tabarakta ya zal jalali wal ikram. O Allah, O God, you are peace, from you comes from peace. Blessed are you, majesty and honorable and high. Allahumma aftah alayna hikmataka wa anshur alayna rahmataka ya zal jalali wal ikram. O Allah, shower us with wisdom and knowledge and understanding, and shower us with mercy and peace, for you are the most great and most high. اللهم إني ظلمت نفسي ظلما خسرا ولا يغفر الذنوب إلا أن تغفر لي مغفرة من عندك رحمن إنك أنت الغفور الرحيم. O Allah, we have caused sins and wrongdoings to ourselves. You are the one who forgives the sins and wrongdoings. Please forgive the sins and wrongdoings that we've caused for ourselves, for you are the most wondrous and high. اللهم صل على محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. All I send my salutations on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the family of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as you send a salutation upon Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and the family of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, for you are the most wondrous and high. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammadin kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid. All I send my blessings upon Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the family of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as you have blessed the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and the family of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, for you are the most wondrous and most high. O Allah, please help the people of Palestine. Please help the people come to understanding and make us the good in this world and goodness in the hereafter. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praises and thanks are to you, Allah, the most great and the most wonderful and the most high. Assalamu alaikum.